But there's one big picture spoiler that I have to give. So if you don't want any spoilers at all, then maybe this might be a day to skip out on class. But I have to talk about it because anybody who's seen this movie knows this is the kind of thing that's right up my alley. Because Sinners is all about black ownership, and that's something I talk about every single day. I've been talking about it every day for like 20 years, and I love the idea that these smart film directors like the Ryan Cooglers and the Mark Harrises and others, that the message has resonated with them. Mark Harris out of Chicago, he's made some really great black movies. I don't know if y'all know about Mark Harris. He's an amazing director that everyone should know about. He's done a lot of shows on BET and stuff like that, and big nice film projects. And Anyway, I watched one of his movies a long time ago called Black Coffee. I think that's what it was called because people kept telling me to, you got to see this movie, you got to see this movie. So I watched his movie, and after I got done watching the movie, I told my significant other, this is how long ago it was. This is pre Alicia, and I looked over and I said, I don't know who this brother is that made this movie, but I have no doubt that he already follows the stuff that we talk about online because at that time, around 2014, 2015, there weren't a lot of people that even understood what I was talking about. When I was talking about the importance of us investing, the importance of us owning assets, things like that. And so I reached out to Mark Harris. I saw him on Facebook and I said, "Hey man, I saw your movie. It was really good." And he messaged me back and said, "Yeah, I've been following you for 5 years. I sent you a message, but you never replied to me." And I was really embarrassed by that. But I could just tell. I could just tell because I said, okay, the way this movie was made, I believe directors speak through their projects. I believe they tell you who they are by the way the characters speak and what the characters believe. And I said, okay, whoever made this movie is a person that believes that number one, black people ain't got to always be fighting. We should be getting along with each other. Number two, we should be owning assets and not just working and begging and scraping and struggling all the time. And that number three, that being black can be a source of happiness and peace and prosperity. It does not have to be misery, discomfort, and dysfunction. Do we agree on that? Do we agree that being black should mean good things? It shouldn't mean that it's one trauma after another. There's no reason that you have to traumatize each other. There's no rules that says that. We just form that nasty habit, right? And that's what we've kind of become known for because every time you see people doing something crazy, that's just undiagnosed, untreated trauma. That's what that is. So with that being said, the movie Sinners was really interesting in a couple of regards, and I'm gonna not give too many spoilers. I'm not gonna really. I mean, I maybe in a couple of weeks I'll do a more detailed deep dive, or I'll say, okay, you can only come in here if you've already seen the movie, because that way I don't want to mess it up for anybody. But I have to talk about some of it today because it just hit me. It was like, whoa, this is so great. Good job, Ryan Coogler. Way to go, man. So the movie Sinners, one of the big themes of the movie is basically that the black people in the movie had done something that we kind of have done here in the Black Business School. They created a space that was 100% black owned, and it was like a peaceful space. It was a space where there was lots of love, where there was very rich culture, where there was joy, where there was happiness. And the more joy there was and the more culture there was, the more the vampires on the outside would feel and smell and hear the what was going on inside. And so the whole film was all about keeping the vampires out. So there's one giveaway. It is kind of a vampire movie, but you probably know that by now. I ain't telling you nothing new. But anyway, so the thing was though that the vampires, what they represented was for the most part, and I think this is where Coogler was going. He was sort of leaning toward the Jim Crow South, and where there will be these sort of sacred, protected spaces of black joy, where where black people could be human, and also where black people could be extraordinary, where black people could be safe, and where black people could be prosperous. And so in that space, it was wonderful until the vampires showed up. And the vultures showed up, and the people that wanted to steal that culture, sort of take out, like suck the soul out of you, to give themselves some other type of superpower, right? And obviously, this was a metaphor for the music industry, for example, where I believe that there are people who understand just how meaningful music is to black people and how powerful music is to black people, how it can inspire us to do great things or inspire us to do terrible things. And someone took over the music, right? In the 90s, hip hop suddenly becomes women are B's and H's and I want to kill black people and just damn near demonic if you believe in that kind of thing. It became pretty ugly. It's like, why would black people celebrate murdering other black people? Why would that be a good thing? How did we take up such a horrible thing and turn it into something that we get excited about, that we're happy to see? So, sinners, if you want to think about keywords to have in your brain as you go see this movie, a few keywords are culture. And I've told you, we talked in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. In that book, I talk about economic culture very deeply. And I talk about culture being connected to your psychology, connected to your subconscious, and that culture has to be protected. I've said this. In fact, I was watching the movie. I was like, oh, this is interesting because I just yesterday on the podcast I was saying that little things like black people educating other black people is a culturally protective mechanism that in which you make sure that your culture stays pure and it becomes what you want it to be. And I've mentioned to you all. Now, here's the other word I want you to keep in your mind as you go see this film is the word institutions. Institutions, various institutions can become places where culture is created and where culture is protected. So in the movie centers, there is a space where there's black culture, and it happens to be a juke joint, and the black people in there singing the blues, and you know how the blues are, like everybody's just sweating and just moaning and making noise and feeling soulful, right? And you can just feel like the ancestors because the energy is so strong, and so culture in that space is protected by institutions. So you had a business, one type of institution, where the culture was protected. And it became a thing where even though the vampires and the vultures were on the outside, the culture was on the inside being protected by the institution where the two brothers started a black-owned business. Do you follow what I'm saying? Right? And really what I've been saying to you over and over, and I'm glad Ryan Coogler put this in a film. I'm so happy he did it. Maybe one day I'll meet him. I'll thank him for doing this. Is that you have to understand why people work so hard to take away every black institution they could get their hands on. They either took it or they corrupted it. Every institution. Your families obliterated. That's an institution gone. Most important institution in your life gone. Black family damn near dead. Your black owned schools gone. No, leave that school. Come to the white school across town so we can integrate you into our curriculum. And we're gonna zombie bite you in the neck and make you into one of us. Um, your black-owned businesses gone. Another institution protecting a culture where it's obliterated, burned to the ground, and now you're blended in. And this film captured it very well. I think he was focused heavily on the musical side of things, musical culture, and those institutions connected to the music industry. But you can talk about this in almost everything. Almost everything. When you talk about just black family culture, black educational culture, black economic culture, all those things were invaded. Right. And so words I want you to keep in mind when you go see this movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. One is the word culture. What does it mean to develop culture? And in the book, I talk about that. I talk about economic culture in particular. I say, you are the guardian of that culture. That is your house. It is up to you to make sure that you develop an economic culture that's going to lead to prosperity and self-reliance, and not this culture that they want you to have that leads to financial irresponsibility, that leads to economic desperation, that leads to all forms of insidious, horrifically bad financial trauma, these economic STDs that they infect you with from birth as a child, as a baby, that where you literally think that being black means not only that you got to try to get it out the mud, but you got to live in the mud. You got to get comfortable in the mud like a pig just swimming in slop and you just love the mud. There's nothing about being black that says you're supposed to get it out the mud. However, if you allow your culture to be infected, then you're going to be living in the mud. And I want you to think for a moment how many of our people we see who are living in the mud. And I'm sorry, in every case, it ain't because they had to live in the mud. You fell for the okie doke. You let the vampires come in, bite you in the neck, and next thing you know, you out here wonder you live in this, you live in the Negro life, and you don't even know how you got there. You don't even understand what happened. So what else? Another word. So culture. I want you to, when you go see this movie, Sinners, I want you to think about the word culture. I want you to think about the word money, money and economics. Well, how does that play a role, right? Protecting the money. Here's what's crazy. There's one part, the one way that the vampires got in was with money. They gave somebody some money, and next thing you know, somebody actually let the vampires into the building because they gave somebody some money. So I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about how many people you've seen, how many black people you've seen who have infected black culture, destroyed the black community, and they did it because of money. Do you understand how many times I was so furious? I got a call one time from TJ Holmes, who he's on one of those TV shows now. I don't know if it's CBS or he was dating a white lady on the NBC show. I don't watch none of that. But TJ, I know he's got the green eyes or something, right? He called me. And I remember and I didn't even know this guy, but he called me and because Don Lemon gave him my number. I didn't know Don had my number. But anyway, so TJ Holmes calls me and he says, I heard what you said about BET. I read your article that you wrote about BET and the harm they're doing to black culture. And I said, yeah, well, cool, nice, thank you. And he says, I couldn't believe what I read because it was almost like you were inside the meetings with us. It was like you were almost there. And I said, yeah, because I understand racial exploitation when I see it. I think deeply about these things. And I remember talking to someone that worked at BET, and I remember that I was like, well, how can you have this white-owned company that is destroying black people and their image around the world and literally just urinating on top of black culture every chance they get? Sure, you might do something good every now and then to try to make yourselves feel better, but for the most part, some of that stuff you see what's happening to these children. You see what happens when these babies get hooked on drugs at an early age. You see what happens when they're overexposed to sexuality at an early age. These little girls are getting molested. These boys are getting shot. These kids are going to prison. And you're glorifying these things. And you know what they said? I remember the guy, he was like, yeah, but did you see how much money the BET Awards made? Do you see how much money it made? I mean, the ratings, we got to give people what they want. We got to give people. No, you don't. Maybe you shouldn't always give people what they want. If you're talking about a sick community and a sick culture, maybe instead of giving them what they want, maybe you should give them what they need. If you're sick, you need medicine. But maybe if you're a drug addict and you're sick, you want heroin. But somebody who loves you isn't going to say, well, you want heroin. I'm going to give you what you want. No, if I love you and you're my brother, I'm not going to give you what you want. I'm going to give you what you need. So ultimately, I thought about that, right? So I'm watching Sinners, and so there's culture, there's money. Money is typically used as an entry point for others to come in and either infect or co-opt or corrupt your culture. Institutions are critical for the protection of culture. This is why it's so important to have black-owned businesses, black-owned families, black-owned schools, because then you can create culture. You cook up culture the same way you cook up a dish. My wife is upstairs cooking chicken with potatoes and cucumbers, and it's like printed in my brain because it smells so damn good. That's why I ain't gonna keep y'all all night because my wife can cook her ass off, and she's a sexy black woman, so she got a lot of booty to cook off. So my wife's up there, and she got some good gravy on this. I just can't wait to get a hold of that. And let me tell you, and I was talking about the food, by the way. Anyway, so here's the food that she's gonna feed me in our household it's very important that she's the only person who touches that food. Do you understand? Like they can't if a stranger or an enemy came in the house and said, "No, I want to cook for your family," we'd be skeptical. We'd say, "No, no, no, you can't cook in this house. We have people that in the house can cook in the house. That's it. Only my wife cooks for me. No, I can't have people just coming in from wherever cooking for me. In fact, when I go on the road, I'm gonna be honest with you. When people come up and say, "Hey, Dr. Boyce, here's some food," I can't eat that food because I don't know what you put in that food. I know how insidious the CIA can be, so I can't eat your food, but I can eat my wife's food because in our house we cook the meal that we want our family to have, and I know that my wife isn't going to just make sure the food is safe. She's going to make sure the sodium is low. She's going to make sure it's something that I need to eat, right? And so ultimately with culture, the same thing is true in your institution, in your house. Our household is an institution in itself. In your institution, in your house, you cook up the culture the way you cook up the food. You cook it with love. You make sure it's healthy. You make sure that it's something that's going to create life and not breed death, right? Because here's the deal: when you step outside, and that's why I love how Ryan Coogler had the vampires circling, and and if they weren't all white, it was like white, it was like a rainbow coalition of vampires. They were white and Asian and black, and that was a great metaphor because we know that the zombies in our culture are not all the same race. It's not white versus black. It's really about just making sure that you have a space that's really yours where you can make it what you need it to be instead of falling for the little tricks where they say, come on, be a part of this. This is what everybody's doing. And then you start going with the flow, and the next thing you know, you lose yourself, you lose your soul, you literally lose your soul. So institutions are critical, and institutions aren't just something that have to be maintained and protected. Institutions have to be built. And so even in the movie, with the two brothers start a business, they had to know how to run a business. They had to build a juke joint. They had to know how to set it up, how to get the liquor and the whatever they were doing in the juke joint, right? They had to know how to set up the business, run the business, maintain the business. So the question is, are we raising children with the skill set to create institutions with the courage, first of all, the courage to walk away from unhealthy institutions. And then number two, to gain the skill set to build institutions. And then number three, have the skill set to maintain those institutions. And then also have the discipline to maintain the institution, to maintain it, in a prolonged sort of way. Because what was so funny in this movie was the vampires were like, we can only come in if you invite us in. And they're like, won't you let me in? Come on, man. If you let me in, I can do it. Right. And so it's like, it makes me think about black people. And here's the deal. Like, you had the Negro Leagues. We talk about it all the time. That was your institution. You had your culture in the Negro Leagues. You were making all the money. It was your money, your culture, your talent being grown and nurtured, your audience, your revenue, your ecosystem. And then somebody came along with some money and said, hey, come on, like let's partner. Like, come on, let us in, let us in. And they didn't understand that when you are dealing with capitalist vulture vampires, which that's kind of what America's known for. America's known for being a very bad business partner with the rest of the world. There was an African leader who said that your previous colonizers, what they do is they tend to come back, and they come back and they label themselves as investors. But people who understand the long game are the ones who say, no, I appreciate everything you're offering, but I'm not interested. I don't want it. And that's how you protect a culture. That's how you protect a community. That's how you protect institutions. So the words I want you to remember when you go see the movie Sinners are culture, money, institutions, integration, and capitalism. I want you to keep these words in your head. So when you go in, I want you to look for the metaphors, look for the connection, look for how certain characters are portrayed, look at what they're valuing, what are they trying to get from you, and that'll explain a big chunk of the black experience in a nutshell. I've always mentioned that you have the juice, you have so much that other people want. You have that culture that people love and emulate. They know that how much money can be made from controlling that culture. You invented hip hop in the South Bronx, and the vampires showed up and took the hip hop and they put it on a record and they sold it around the world. And next thing you know, they're making more money from your culture than you are. You have the best athletes on the planet, and so these athletes, which can only come from a black mother, only black mothers have the ability to produce a Shaquille O'Neal or Michael Jordan or Bo Jackson. Only black women can do this, right? And so this is a resource, a commodity that's produced by you, and you have to have the ability to control and protect that resource, right? And this is why powernomics is so important, and this is also why Dr. Claude Anderson is seen as so dangerous. Because what he really talks about in Powernomics, which is why everybody should read it, powernomics.com. Go to that website, powernomics.com. Because what he's really saying is this is how you control the resource from the production to the distribution to the monetization. You control every piece of the process, and you don't need these partners coming in that are going to eventually suck the lifeblood out of whatever it is that you've built and you've created and you've made perfect. Okay, so remember this. So when you talk about institutions, most of us are facing institutional racism. And I think that's what Ryan Coogler was getting to. He was really talking about just the bastion of institutional racism that black people have faced that leads us to feel so hopeless sometimes. But here's the good news. The good news is that institutional racism does not have to stop you on any level. Institutional racism only stops you if you've been bitten by the vampires, which leads you to think in a certain way. And if you think in a certain way, then you're in the trap, you love the trap, you're connected to the trap, you can't imagine life outside of the trap. And there are lots of our people that think that way. But here's the way you overcome a racist institution or institutional racism is you get out of the institution. You leave. If your job is racist, you quit your job. But then why don't you quit your job? Oh, because I can't. Well, why can't you? Well, because I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. Well, why don't you know that? Did anybody teach you that when you were a kid? No, they only taught me how to get a job. Well, there you go. That explains everything. That they shrunk your world to that of an employee, and that's all you see. So now, do you understand? I hope that we understand why understanding economics at the highest levels is an essential skill for every black child that wants to truly be free. The way they control you and enslave you and suck up your resources and suck your soul out of your body is through your economic desperation. It's pimping 101. They've got the economic power. You are economically weak. So if you become dependent on people who hate you, then they can kick you around and abuse you. It ain't a damn thing you can do about it. But I know that you can. So you just have to think outside that box. So shout out to Ryan Coogler for making a good movie, man. I'd never met this brother, but maybe one day I will. But like I said, Mark Harris is another great director. Y'all got to look up Mark Harris. He's out of Chicago. He's a friend of mine. He's made some great movies with a lot of different networks and stuff, and he makes really strong, solid black movies too. He's up there with the best of them as well. All right, so I'm gonna read from the book Dirty Little Secrets. We're gonna do some hidden history tonight, and I guarantee you that by the end of the night, you will hear about at least three things that you never learned in school. And we do this every Wednesday night for Powernomics training, and also every single morning we meet for economic elevation training. So if you want to join that class for free, pull out your phone, text the word morning to the phone number 87948. Text morning to 87948, and I will send you a link so you can join. Also, what I'll put in the chat, I promise you all that I give you a list of stocks in Japan. Right now, with the tariffs and everything kind of happening, I think that there are some good opportunities overseas. So, as promised, I'm gonna give that list. I'm gonna try to find the damn thing. It's somewhere. You don't you hate it when you had a browser open and then it just disappears. Well, I'm gonna find that browser. Here we go. I'm gonna put this list in the chat so you can just go to this link and decide if you want to take a look at some of these stocks in Japan. You can buy them on the U.S. stock exchanges, and again, there's no guarantee with investing, but these are assets that I believe are going to do well over the next 3 to 5 years. Remember, with investing, you want to be a long-term thinker. You don't want to be a short-term thinker. And I see Amani's in the chat as well. So thank you, Amani, for all your help. If you can keep that link in case anybody loses it, I'd appreciate that. So I'm gonna put this in here. But yeah, so all right, so now that we've mentioned the movie Sinners, which by the way, he's killing it at the box office. I think Ryan Coogler's film has made what is it over? I think it's over 100 and something million dollars. And it was cool because the movie set a record for having the smallest drop off from week one to week two. A lot of movies start off fast and then they slow down really quickly. His movie started off fast and stayed fast. And it may get faster because the word's getting out on what a great job he did. The cinematography was really good. And my wife and I really enjoyed it. We went to see it this afternoon. So shout out to Ryan Coogler for doing a wonderful job. All right, so let's read this. This is on page 27 of the book Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. And this section is called More Unsung Heroes. So on page 27 of Dirty Little Secrets, he says, following the Civil War, the North neglected the plight of freed slaves in favor of welcoming new immigrants, mostly white Europeans, streaming into the country. So even though this war was allegedly fought over slavery, and we're supposed to have all these allies in the North, he's literally saying that even the people in the North didn't like you. You didn't have any allies anywhere. That's another point that Kugler made in his book. They literally were talking about the difference between Mississippi and Chicago, and they were like, no, it's Jim Crow. It's just you replace the plantations with big buildings, and now we have the corporate plantation, which is an extension of sharecropping 100 years ago. Why is that? Well, because remember, in the life of a sharecropper, the number one thing they would do is they would trap you with debt. So with a sharecropper, if you want to trap them with debt, and because slavery is not legal, so we can't force you to do this. So what we can do is do it like a vampire. We trick you into taking on the debt, and then you get under so much debt that you can never leave the plantation because you have to work until the debt's repaid. But because the debt will never be repaid, you're pretty much working for me for life. So this is what sharecropping did. So people would end up in that trap. Well, nowadays the new sharecropping is things like student loans. So it's like, okay, go to college. You don't have to go, but if you go, you'll be one of us. We'll let you in, right? Again, so much like that vampire thing. The vampires didn't make them do anything. They would just kind of talk him into it. They say, okay, right? So anyway, so same thing. Right? They tell you go to college and borrow as much as you need to borrow because it's going to work out for you. It's going to be great. You're going to integrate. You're going to get this great job. Your life is going to be wonderful. But instead, some of y'all up in here, 55, 60 years old, still paying your student loans. How many people in here are over 50 still paying student loans? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Anybody over 50, over 40, 40, 45, 50? How many of y'all are too old to be paying? How many of y'all are at an age still paying loans where you thought you'd be done by now? There we go. So this might include the 30 something. How many of y'all thought you'd be done paying student loans by now and you're still paying that shit? Excuse my French. Anybody in here, raise your hand. Give me a yes in the chat if you're in that category. All right, so that's the new sharecropping. It's like, okay, we need workers. America cannot survive without two things. America needs two things. A pimp, just like a pimp needs hoes. You can't be a good pimp if you ain't got no hoes. Right? That's it. A pimp without a hoe is just a guy on the corner, right? Waiting for someone to do all the work. So pimps need hoes. So America, the capitalist pimp, ultimately needs two things in order for them to succeed. They need at least a couple of things. There's other things, but two things. They need consumers to buy just all their products, right? And they also need employees. They need workers, because the billionaires ain't gonna do all the work. Elon Musk can't do enough work to make $80 billion a quarter. So ultimately, to get the employees, the best way to lock them down is to have them in debt. And that's why after the pandemic, they were telling Biden, they said, you've got to end this moratorium on student loan payments because people don't want to go to work anymore because they don't have to anymore. So basically, my point is to say that that's the new sharecropping. And so it doesn't mean don't go to college. We're sending ours to college. So don't think I'm saying that college is bad. I'm not saying that. People oversimplify the message. I have to make that clear. I'm not saying don't go to college. I'm saying keep the costs down so that the debt does not overwhelm you in the end. So here we go. So moving on. So after the Civil War, the North, they didn't care about freed slaves. They didn't like black people that much. The federal government abandoned blacks after enacting constitutional amendments to give the former slaves paper freedom and political and civil rights. At the same time, the government withheld the economic and social rights essential to black progress. So they said, look, we'll give you, we'll let you vote and stuff, maybe eventually, and we'll kind of let you be citizens, but we're not really going to give you anything that actually allows you to have power in America, which is money. Money drives everything in America. So as a result, many blacks lack the tools and resources necessary to compete in the job and business markets. The black codes enacted by the old Southern plantation owners and politicians in the winter of 1865, immediately following emancipation, made black people even more vulnerable. The black codes replaced the defunct slave codes of 1705. So again, they just sort of took the same model and just shifted it a little bit, right? Am I on TikTok? Yes, I am on TikTok. But look, I have 41,500 followers on TikTok. So make sure it's me because there's about 100 fake Boyce Watkins pages on TikTok. I did not even know I was that interesting. So be really careful because there are fake Boyce Watkinses out here. If anybody ever comes into your Instagram or into your DM and says, "Hey, brother, what's going on? Have you seen my crypto platform?" That ain't me. I ain't got time to crawl in nobody's DMs. I barely crawl my wife's DMs. That's the only DM I'm gonna be crawling into. Okay. All right. So, this ain't Shannon Sharp. I ain't trying to get caught up. All right. So let's keep going here. All right. So the black codes enacted by the old Southern plantation owners and politicians in the winter of 1865, immediately following emancipation, made black people even more vulnerable. The black codes replaced the defunct slave codes of 1705. The black codes mandated that every Southern black had to have an annual labor contract in writing with a white landowner, sorry, in his possession by the 1st of January, or risk being charged with vagrancy, jailed, and assigned to public works projects. So that was another thing they mentioned in the movie centers. They talked about being arrested for vagrancy. Anti-black sentiments were so intense that many blacks fled the South for the relative safety of the North and Midwest. In 1879, two black men, Henry Adams of Louisiana and Moses Pap Singleton of Tennessee, led an exodus of 40,000 blacks from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama and Georgia for the Midwest. Many traveled to states like Kansas that initially opened their borders. But as the number of destitute blacks in the state grew, the climate became increasingly hostile. Hotels, restaurants, and boat lines refused to accommodate the black newcomers. Now, this is in the North. This is where you're supposed to be safe. These are your allies, y'all. These are your friends. Let's see here. Let's see. Singleton became so discouraged by the treatment of his compatriots that he mounted a campaign, ultimately unsuccessful, to encourage blacks to migrate to Liberia or Canada. Hmm. Anybody heard of Henry Adams or Moses Pap Singleton? Anybody heard? Give me a yes or no. Anybody heard of either one of these people? Anybody? You've heard of them? Okay, Rosa says yes. Anybody else? Yes or no? Okay, I see a lot of no's. Okay. Again, more stuff that they didn't teach you in school. All right, so let's keep going. In the same year, Edwin P. McCabe, a lesser known black activist unsuccessfully campaigned to create a Negro state in the Oklahoma Territory. The Cherokee Strip in the Oklahoma Territory was also briefly considered as a site for a black homeland. This movement failed as well. The proposal went down in flames not only because of the predictable lack of federal support and private assistance, but because of the hostility of Indians as well as whites. In any case, the Oklahoma Territory was no more prepared to accept blacks than Kansas, Iowa, or Nebraska. The Civil War freed blacks from the physical chains of slavery, but not from its handicapping legacies. All right. So, what that says is, number one, you ain't got no friends. Stop thinking you got friends and allies. You ain't got none. Number two, it says very clearly, in no uncertain terms, that anything that you ever create, anything you ever try to build, anything you ever try to have, you're going to have to fight to defend that thing. You're going to have to fight to give it life. You're going to have to fight to grow it. You're going to have to fight to protect it. You're going to have to fight to sustain it. You're going to have to fight. So if you are black and you're trying to be free and you ain't prepared to fight, then just go ahead and sign up for slavery right now. Just go ahead and just say, Massa, I gives up. I sorry. I apologize. What you need me to do, I'm gonna arrive on my knees, because that's what it's gonna be. Anything that you ever try to create that you are using as a vehicle for independence or cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-sustainability, that kind of thing. Anything that you're designing for self-reliance, especially if it's doing well. Like just like in that movie Sinners, right? Anything that you create that is yours, that is prosperous, that is doing well, a vampire's going, they're gonna smell it and they're gonna come and try to get a piece of it. And if you a sucker, if you fall for the okey doke, if you don't have discipline, if you're not focused and you don't have a strategy, then you're going to lose it. There's four keys, there's four pieces in the pathway to building wealth and power. Write this down, please. Number one, knowledge. Knowledge is power. You got to know, to get the money, you got to know where the hell the money's at. So a lot of people lose, they can't even get to first base. They lose before the game even begins, because that's one of the reasons financial literacy is kept so low in public schools and all this stuff, right? A lot of people don't even know, they don't got no money because they don't even know where the money's at. They don't even know who has the money, how they got it, where it came from, right? They show them some stupid rapper on TV and they're like, "Oh, that's where the money's at." No, that rapper ain't got no money. Stop it. Okay? So number one, you have to have knowledge, you have to know where the money's at. Number two, you got to make a plan. Whenever I mentor young ladies that are dating, I tell them, I say, ask that man what his 5-year plan is. And if he can't answer you in like 60 seconds, that's not the man for you. If you respect him as a potential head of a household and he does not have strategic abilities or problem solving capabilities, he's going to put you and your kids in a bus, and he's going to drive that bus off a cliff, and it's going to explode at the bottom of the mountain and catch on fire, and everybody's going to die. Do not connect yourself to someone who has not thought about their plan. Because to build wealth, you have to have a plan. You don't get rich by accident. Number three, you have to work the plan. You get a lot of talking. We gonna take over the whole black community, y'all. We gonna build $1 billion. We gonna do it. Talking is cheap. At some point, so okay, good for you. You've done a couple things. You kind of know where the money's at. You have a plan to get it. But the work that's the long part, because what wealth really is wealth is an accumulation process. That's what it is. That's why time is so important. In all the equations that measure wealth and how wealth grows, and I've seen them all. I was teaching finance 25 years ago at the college level when I was 22. So all these come up to these formulas, and I'm like, oh, I get it. It's like driving down a long road, and the longer you drive down the road, the wealthier you are. So what are your habits? What is your accumulation process? What plan, what trajectory are you on? And what are you doing on a daily and weekly basis that's accumulating something that's going to stack up into a pile of money and resources? That's all it is. It's a big, fat, gigantic, it's like a big pile of stuff. What are you accumulating? What are you working the plan? What's the plan? Maybe the plan is I'm gonna study 5 hours a day for the next 10 years, or I'm gonna invest $200 a week into the S&P 500, and I'm gonna do that for 15 years. You have to have the accumulation process. If you do not have the accumulation process where you're working the plan, then the plan don't mean a damn thing. The plan don't mean jack. That's the third part. And so after you have figured out where the money is because you've been educated, then you make a plan, and then you work the plan and you accumulate resources. Then at that point, you get to the really hard part, which means protecting what you have. Because as you start accumulating, nothing draws attention more than extraordinary success. When you build the mountain, Shannon Sharp, and you're standing at the king of the hill, everybody's looking over and saying, who is that guy that rose above everybody else? And at that point, the vampires come circling. Go ask Ryan Coogler, right? The vampires start trying to get a piece of that. They want the first of all, the IRS, just estate planning. The IRS is going to be the first vulture that shows up. The IRS is going to try to take 40-50% of everything you have when you die, maybe more. If you don't make a plan, you don't make a will and a trust, they're going to take at least half of your kids' money. Prince learned that the hard way. Prince gave $100 million away to a bunch of people that he didn't even like because Prince did not have a proper estate plan in place before he died. Um, then on top of that, you get other little things. You get OnlyFans models, right? Maybe haters, maybe people filing lawsuits. The black man is a great target for lawsuits, especially things that involve sexual misconduct, because it's so easy to accuse a black man of something because everyone automatically believes you, right? They can sue you for 50 million because we live in a society that thinks that a white woman who got her booty touched should get $10 million so she can feel better. And so I can't do that. I can't sue anybody for that amount of money, at least not for something like that, right? But still, though, for white women, they get special treatment. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to navigate all of the threats that are going to come to your wealth. If you build a Black Wall Street, they will come to burn it down. In Ryan's movie, they were trying to burn buildings down. I'm not going to tell more about the movie. I don't want to spoil it, but things got burned down, and Black Wall Street got burned down. And the question is, how do you respond when you know that they're going to come and try to burn it down? Now, some people say, well, well, we can't build, we shouldn't build nothing because we build it, they just gonna come burn it down. That's such a wimpy ass answer to a really difficult question. That's not the answer of a free black man or a free black woman. The answer of a free black man or free black woman is where you say, okay, if you burn it down, you're going to burn down over my dead body. And then if you do succeed in burning it down, I'm going to rebuild immediately. We will begin rebuilding. In the Vietnam War, that was what the Viet Cong said when they asked them 30 years later, they said, we dropped more bombs on Vietnam than all the other countries dropped on every other country in all of World War II combined. How in the hell did you keep rebuilding those bridges when we kept blowing those bridges up? And the lady said, we had saying that if they blow it up, we will rebuild. If they blow it up again, we will rebuild again. And that is the kind of resilience that's required to protect something that's yours. So you go back to those words I talked about for the movie Sinners: culture, money, two things that need to be protected: culture, wealth, institutions, which contain that culture, and then capitalism, capitalist vultures, and integration. All of these words pop up in my head because integration is one of the ways that the capitalist vultures were able to come in and destroy black institutions and get access to black culture and wealth. And not just get access to it, but to poison it in a significant way, to the point where you turn around and you're like, I'll be damned. We've been working our asses off for hundreds of years and we ain't got nothing. How did that happen? So let me keep reading here. All right. So page 28 of the book Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Anderson says this. He says, the father of the country given poison peas. Okay, interesting. Phoebe Francis, the daughter of a black West Indian man, saved George Washington's life on the eve of the Revolutionary War. Francis was the daughter of Black Sam Francis, the owner of a well-known tavern in New York City, where George Washington and his officers customarily met to dine and discuss plans for a war with England. In 1776, the British were well aware of Washington's entertainment and culinary habits. Oh, the feds were watching George Washington. Okay. Hoping to head off a revolt for independence, the British planned to kill off the colony's military leadership. So you're not the first group of people where people tried to come and kill your leaders. Happens all the time. They devised a simple, dastardly plan: poison George Washington. Their agent was the Irishman Thomas Hickey, who had won Washington's confidence and served as his bodyguard. Ooh, didn't they do that to Malcolm? Wasn't one of Malcolm's bodyguards also like an agent or something like that? Or did I get that wrong? And you know Dr. King had agents all around him. Hickey courted Francis. It's actually spelled with a U. I'm gonna say Francis, but it might be Francis. Hickey courted Francis because she served Washington and his party when they ate and drank at her father's tavern. Okay, so Hickey was the bad guy. Thomas Hickey, the Irishman, was George Washington's homeboy, and he was also his bodyguard, which means he trusted him. And so he started dating the lady because she served Washington and his party when they ate and drank at her father's tavern. So this is what this is the kind of stuff I wanted to say to like Shannon Sharp. I was like, you know that they usually use like prostitutes and stuff as agents and spies. They make the best spies because people like tell all their secrets when they're laid down in bed with a lady. My dad was a cop, and he said that a lot of people would get arrested because they would confess their crime to their girlfriend, and then when the girlfriend got mad or caught him with another woman, the girlfriend would be up in the police station like telling all his secrets. So my father used to have a saying where he would say, you keep your friend your was it your enemies close and your friends closer. And I said, well, don't you mean keep your friends close and your enemies closer like the Godfather? He said, no. He said, because your friends are the ones that come get you. They don't, why would they send an enemy? You see an enemy coming from a mile away. Your friend, you'll let them get close, and that's the one that'll take you out. So George Washington, he was one of many people that was being backstabbed by somebody he trusted. So check this out. It says, after developing an intimate friendship with Francis, Hickey gave her a dish of poisoned peas to serve to Washington when he came for dinner. So Hickey, who was the sneaky, the sneaky, whatchamacallit. So Hickey, who was the sneaky killer, gave the poison peas to the lady Frances to give to Washington. Despite her newly developed friendship with and romantic feelings for Hickey, Frances became suspicious of the Irishman's actions and warned Washington, who threw the peas into the yard. Chickens who ate the peas, the discarded peas, immediately fell dead. Wow. Isn't that crazy? He almost changed the course of history. A black woman saved the country. Tell me that ain't. I think that's kind of cool. I don't know. I think at the very least that's like one more thing black people can start taking credit for. Natalia says, did your team reach out to random followers yesterday? Sometimes we do have people that might reach out and call you. So you can verify it. You can email support at theblackbusinessschool.com if you want to verify it. But yeah, they do it. They call you, that's different, right? But yeah, but that's pretty cool, right? That literally, isn't that crazy? That So a black woman saved the life of George Washington right before the Revolutionary. I'm sure most of none. I bet. Okay, like give me a yes if you've never ever heard this anywhere. Give me a yes if this was not taught in your school. How many of you? It was not taught in my school. I've never heard this before. I'm looking for one person to say no. One person to tell me that they knew the name of Phoebe Francis and spelled Francis with a U. Francis like that. Anybody? Okay, I see a no. Okay, John Trey said no, but I see a lot of yeses. A lot of people have never heard it. That's crazy. I mean, you think about what if she had been slipping? What if she had been so madly in love that she didn't even think about it or gave him the poison peas? Like, then not only would he have died and the whole American Revolution wouldn't have happened, I guess, or maybe it would somebody else would have took the lead, but I don't think so. There would be no George Washington, that's for damn sure, because the chickens all died immediately when they ate the peas. But also, she probably would have got arrested for this. So he was setting her up. Look at that. And black women saving the day again. I tell you what, y'all. Shout out to black women. My God. All right. So both Miss Frances and her father, Black Sam, were officially recognized by the Continental Congress for their service to the fledgling country and given a sum of money. Later, when George Washington became America's first president, he appointed Frances as the White House steward. How about that? Phoebe Frances, Frances. How about that for some black history? I told you were going to hear at least three or four things that you never heard of. All right, so let's keep going. This is great. All right, Richard Allen, the next story. Richard Allen, the father of the Negro. Philadelphia and the Mason-Dixon line, the official boundary between the nation's free and slave states, were only a few miles apart. The geographic proximity to allow white slave owners to travel north to the city of brotherly love in order to randomly abduct freed blacks and northern slaves who they claimed were runaways. Okay, that took a turn for the worse. Reverend Richard Allen, born a slave in Philadelphia in 1760, was one such victim. Allen was seized by slave traders who signed sworn affidavits that he was a fugitive. After many prominent Philadelphians, black and white, testified on Allen's behalf, the charges against him were dismissed and the white slave trader was imprisoned for perjury. After the ordeal, Allen, who converted to Protestantism at 17, went on to convert his master, buy his freedom for $2,000, become a preacher, and founded Philadelphia's African Methodist Episcopal AME Church, of which he became the first bishop. A pioneer among black abolitionists and president of the first National Black AME Church Convention in the Western world, Allen played a pivotal role in defining black politics. He personified the values of hard work, refusal to accept subordinated status, and emphasized collective action. In a nutshell, Allen's thesis was black empowerment. In fact, he was so closely identified with the movement for black freedom and independence that some called him the father of the Negro. Okay, quick survey. How many of you have ever heard of Richard Allen, the father of the Negro? Anybody heard him? Anybody learned that in school? Well, they teach you all that stupid stuff that we learn, same stories over and over and over again. Well, I'm inspired by that. What I like hearing about black people that had courage and vision and intelligence and endurance and fought back. And I love this. This tells us who we are, where we're from, what we're made of, and why we're supposed to be great. All right, so David Walker, a rare black militant. Let's see what David Walker is all about. Never anybody know who David Walker is? Anybody? Okay, let's see who David Walker is. Born the son of a slave father and a free mother in Wilmington, North Carolina, David Walker grew up to become a Boston businessman and abolitionist. Walker's claim to fame came in 1829 when he circulated a pamphlet titled Appeal, a powerful plea for black liberation. The appeal circulated widely in the North and South, and many credited it with provoking slave revolts and helping to shape the public debates that led to the Civil War. Wow. Okay. Shout out to David Walker. In his fiery writings, Walker condemned the intentional enslavement, criminalization, and impoverishment of the black race. With the exception of black Africans, he pointed out all races of the earth were born free. He railed against the commonly held perception that blacks wanted to be white, insisting that they preferred to just be as their creator had made them. A lot of our people still need to hear that. Walk around here thinking they white. Urging that his brothers show no fear because God was on their side, Walker contended that any man not willing to fight for his freedom deserved to remain in chains and even to be butchered by his captors. Insisting that death was preferable to slavery, he said that if an uprising occurred, slaves must be willing to kill or be killed. That's a real man right there. A man who refused to defend himself was worse than an infidel and undeserving of sympathy. Apparently, Walker's veiled threat or challenge did not fall on deaf ears. In response to Walker's statement, the state of Georgia offered a $10,000 reward for. I knew this was coming. They offered a $10,000 reward for Walker if he was taken alive, and a $1,000 reward if he was found dead. A year after the offer, in 1831, the abolitionists died under mysterious circumstances. Some claim Walker died for his people's freedom. Others claim he was murdered for the bounty. Oof. Type David Walker in the chat. David Walker. Write his name in the chat. Let's bring him in. Let's bring him in here. I'm getting emotional reading his story. Oh my gosh, I'm choking up a little bit. And because when we do this, I don't know what it is, but I feel like the person's here because I start to feel it inside my body. I feel it, I can't, I'm feeling something, right? I don't know about y'all, but I'm inspired by this. This man died so we could be free. I mean, you know, what a sacrifice. What a sacrifice. All right, David Walker, that is his name. So make sure your children know this man's name. Make sure he did not die in vain. We control Black history. We decide who we are. We decide what our history is going to be. Whew. All right. That was heavy. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. It's getting to be too much. A master felt the golden rule. On rare occasions during the Civil War, black slaves exercised a measure of revenge for their mistreatment while in captivity. One slave owner who took perverse pleasure in beating naked female slaves was captured by the Union Army in 1864. The Union general, a devout abolitionist, ordered the slave owner stripped and bound to a tree. The general ordered black male soldiers to whip the white slave owner. When they finished, three female slaves who the slave owner had regularly beaten for minor infractions took their turns, settling some old painful scores. The black female slaves had gotten their chance to, quote, do unto others as they have done to you. That's what I'm talking about. That's right. Kick his ass. Okay. All right. All right. I'm gonna stop right now. I feel like there's like a lot here, and I'm just kind of David Walker, something about the David Walker one got me. Let's go ahead and call it a night. Um, we're gonna meet for tomorrow for economic elevation in the morning. We do this every day, 7 days a week, because we're serious about our economics. If you want to join us, text the word morning on your phone to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. And also just a reminder, we do have these cool new financial or stock market flashcards for kids. They're actually stock options flashcards. I'm sorry. So if you want to teach stock options to your kids, I will text those out and you guys can go take a look at them. Some of you have already bought them. You bought them all up really fast. We got some more in stock. So I will send you. I think the URL actually is like stockoptionsflashcards.com. So stock options flashcards. So feel free to try that. Options with an S, and maybe you can teach your kids stock options for the summer. And in addition to that, don't forget we have the Economic Elevation Summit happening in Miami on May 9th and 10th. So if you want to join us in Miami for that event, you can go to economicelevationsummit.com. That's economicelevationsummit.com. All right, guys. So have a great night. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. And thank you to David Walker for dying for our freedom. And thank you to Phoebe Francis for not letting George Washington get killed so we're not, I guess we'd be British or something. I don't know. So there we go. All right. So have a good night, everybody. We're gonna meet again next week, and so if you're on the text list, I'll send you an invite, and we're gonna do this Powernomics every Wednesday, and we also do Money in the Morning every single day, Economic Elevation every morning. So I hope you'll join and bring your family. Like you're the educator in your house. Remember, culture must be curated and protected through institutions. Your institution you control is your household, your family, and you want to keep that away from any form of outside interference. Build the culture that you want to see, and that's how we doing things. All right. So have a good night, everybody. God bless you. I'll see you all tomorrow.